Hey, yo, what's the deal? That's your boy Tag from Pro Wrestling Tag. You know what I mean? As of this recording, it's 5:10 p.m. It is 5:12 p.m. October 15th, 2024. You know what I'm saying? And I just finished eating some good food. You know what I'm saying? Right now, I'm waiting for a phone call from a doctor because I have an appointment. You know what I'm saying? That I have to take care of and things like that. This video, I wanted to come, I wanted to definitely do something in this video, because there's a topic I wanted to make, because, I love video games. With me, there's a lot of things that I love. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things I love, video games, art, sports, music, arts and crafts, movies and females. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like jewelry too. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about hobbies. You know what I'm saying? It's for me, it's sports, wrestling, video games, and pussy, nigga. And females. You know what I'm saying? Oh man, you talk about things I used to have back in the days. You know what I'm saying? Like with pictures of females up on the wall. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, especially like, rap females and R&B females who had crushes on. Oh my goodness, what? Like my whole room was surrounded by nothing but females, yo. I mean, I had what? I had SWV on my wall. I had Escape on my wall. I had Changing Faces on my wall. I had fucking, Foxy Brown, Lil Kim, a bunch. You know what I mean? But I also had other stuff on the wall too. You know what I mean? I had, posters of Michael Jordan up on the wall. I had, different athletes on the wall, and I had video game posters. Y'all know how I was in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? But one thing that I loved to death, of course, was video games. You know what I mean? And even still to this day, I love retro video games. You know what I mean? One thing I love is I love, the video games of back then, right? And there was a lot of different genres I love, of video games. I mean, action adventure games, sports games. What other kind of games? Space shooters, beat 'em ups, airplane games like 1942 and stuff, but of course, the one that I always loved the most was wrestling. I also like survival horror too. Survival horror like Resident Evil, you know what I'm saying? Parasite's Eve, Silent Hill, but, games like that. But I like Ninja Gaiden too. I love games like that. You know what I'm saying? But I love pro wrestling. Pro wrestling games, I love to death. And one thing about me when it comes down to pro wrestling video games is there are a couple of video games that I definitely enjoy. I think there's a lot of pro wrestling video games that I enjoyed way back in the days. You know what I'm saying? Going up until like maybe, I'm going to say around the time the 360 came. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I would definitely give y'all some of, my favorite wrestling games that I love to play. Like, the first ever wrestling game I played was WrestleMania. WWF WrestleMania for the NES. From LJN. And it was okay. I mean, look, there was never a pro, that was actually like the first real, licensed professional wrestling game, like from an actual brand. Remember, WCW also had a game on the Nintendo, right? Basically, it was World Championship Wrestling, right? But, I didn't like WWF WrestleMania. I didn't really like a lot of the LJN wrestling games. Just only the ones that was on the Super Nintendo. You know what I'm saying? Because that was all that we really had. Like, because if you look at the NES games, you know what I'm saying? They didn't really have a lot. You know what I'm saying? No, matter of fact, hold on, let me take something back. I was gonna say something about WWF Superstars, but that was in the arcade. That was my shit. WWF Superstars from Technos, that was my game. But if we're talking about, wrestling video games that I enjoyed, like during that time, it was, for the Nintendo, it was Tecmo World Wrestling, and it was also NES Pro Wrestling. Oh, I loved both of those. Oh man, both of those was lit. Tag team wrestling was You know what I mean? It wasn't nothing, you know, it definitely was nothing special. You know, it really was nothing special. Tag team wrestling was just, it was just bland. Yeah, it was pretty bland, just like Sega Pro Wrestling. You know, in the arcades, I mean, shit. There was fucking, I didn't play Champion Wrestler from Tato until like way later on, but I would say Wrestle War was not a bad game. You know, Wrestle War, this shit was hard as shit though. Wrestle War was hard as shit. You know, Mat Mania was okay. You know what I'm saying? Mat Mania was okay, but my favorite would have to be Champion Wrestler, you know, from that time. You know, going into the 90s, and there definitely, like I said, there was definitely some wrestling games that came out. I mean, some good shit. You know, I mean, the two obvious before like the mid to late 90s, I mean, the two obvious was fucking Saturday Night Slam Masters and you know, 3 Count Bout. Both of those were good too. You know, both of those were really good. I also like WrestleFest. I mean, come on, WrestleFest was the shit. WrestleFest was the shit. It was it was fun. It was a lot of fun. You know what I mean? But if we're talking about, like I said, we're talking about pro wrestling games from, you know, from the 90s. I mean, you know, there were definitely plenty. I mean, Sega Wrestle War was not bad. You know, for the Genesis, it was a lot easier than its arcade counterpart. I can tell you that much. Let me see, what other wrestling video game did I enjoy playing during that time? You know, WrestleMania arcade game, I love to death. That was cool. A lot of the PlayStation wrestling games, you know, was okay. Actually, some. Let me take that back. There was some. You know, Power Pro Wrestling I fucked with. You know, let me see. WCW versus the World was really, really good. Was it World Tour? It was versus the World. You know, any game that was not affiliated with THQ. Any game that was not affiliated with THQ for the PlayStation. Because, shit, do I have to go further with fucking WCW Nitro and WCW Thunder? Oh my goodness. Oh man. But nothing, of course, tops the Aki games. You know what I'm saying? That came out for the Nintendo 64. Nothing. Now, I mean, there was nothing. You know what I'm saying? It was amazing. It was amazingly good. You know what I mean? It was clearly fucking good. You know, I mean, WCW Revenge, WCW NWO World Tour. Oh man, don't let me get started. And of course, I can't forget, you know, the what's his face, WWF Warzone and WWF Attitude, which was okay. It was okay, but it was ahead of its time because a lot of people might not realize that WWE. See, those two games basically are game changers for specific reasons that still has implements to this day. Why? Because Warzone, you know, Warzone was basically the first ever wrestling game for you to make your own character, to make your own wrestling. Attitude was the first ever wrestling game that had a full season. You know what I'm saying? It had a full season in it. Let me go back into something too, because I don't want to forget this. So, you know, for the Super Nintendo, I remember a game called Hammerlock Wrestling, which was okay. It wasn't anything spectacular, but it was okay. You know, but let me go back into the Super Nintendo where, you know, actually no, Nintendo 64, where they, you know, where you had, you know, WWF Warzone and Attitude. Those games changed the landscape of what you see moving forward. You know what I mean? And then, you know, once the WWF went to, you know, THQ for their wrestling games, you know what I'm saying? ECW Hardcore Revolution, ECW Anarchy Rules is basically an upgraded version of Attitude. Now, I mean, it's an upgraded version. You know, another one that I remember also was WCW Mayhem, which was okay. Remember, it was EA Sports who was making the video games. It actually was not bad. I would have took that shit way better than fucking you know, than Nitro and Thunder. And then remember when WWE jumped into Ukes and everything. Remember, they came out with WWF SmackDown. You know, Here Comes the Pain. You know, it was a bunch of games from Ukes that was actually pretty fucking good for the PlayStation. SmackDown 2, and then of course you had you had I'm not even gonna talk about Backstage Assault. Then you had fucking Legends of Wrestling Showdown. Which definitely was not a bad wrestling game at all. The Raw versus SmackDowns were pretty good. I didn't forget about the Fire Pro Wrestling games either. I didn't forget about that. I did not forget about that one bit at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, that never came into the States, but there was another game I forgot to mention that I used to play in the arcades too. And it was hard as shit, but it was still an okay game. The Main Event from Konami. That was not bad either. But as we go towards the PlayStation 2 era, I mean, the wrestling games, boy. Oh man, shit. Oh yeah, Sega also had a wrestling game too. They did the Virtual Pro Wrestling, which was good. It was all Japan Pro Wrestling games. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, you also had fucking Def Jam Vendetta, Def Jam Fight for New York. You know what I mean? Like there was definitely some good wrestling games, B. And don't forget TNA Impact that came out way later on. Those wrestling games that I named, they have a place in my heart. They have a true place in my heart that I really, really enjoy. And I wish a lot of wrestling games now in today's day and age would pick up some things that we enjoyed from back then. Yeah, like I will hope that 2K is not bad, but it just doesn't have that oomph that you see in past wrestling games. You know what I'm saying? And EA Sports, AEW Fight Forever. I mean, they got a lot of work to do. They got a lot of fucking work to do. But I love video games. You know what I'm saying? I love pro wrestling video games, and those were just some of my faves I love playing. You know what I mean? But I also am glad to see that there are developers making games that are heavily inspired by those games from back then. Like, look at Retromania Wrestling. Retromania Wrestling is fucking amazing. It is basically, it is a sequel to WrestleFest. It's an awesome sequel to WrestleFest. And also, don't forget Ultra Pro Wrestling, which is another game that I've seen that's really good. That basically, it is heavily inspired by the early Aki games from WCW Revenge, WCW NWO World Tour, and fucking, No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000. Now, I mean, God, I love those games. But I'm about to holler at y'all. You know what I'm saying? This video is actually going to be going up later tonight at about 8 p.m. So I'm going to holler at y'all. All right? Peace.